Hey everybody, James P. Wagner here again. I'm here with Nick Hale. Hey Nick.
Hey James, hey everybody.
As you know by now, we're the publishers for Local Gems Press, and this is the publisher's Speakeasy, our little hidden behind the closet with the look through thing or whatever. We give you the behind the scenes talk about poetry and publishing topics, usually frequently asked questions that we've been asked a million times and decided to throw together in a video so that we don't have to answer it again, even though we know we will. We always do. But yeah, we get these questions, emailed to us, some from seminars, some things that we've just, picked up over the time. And so one question that we actually get a lot is, are poetry contests worth it? And go ahead, Nick.
Oh, I was gonna say the my first reaction was it depends.
Yeah, that tends to be a lot of our first reaction, but it's also a pretty vague question. So, one of the things that I would ask about it is because not all contests are created equal, obviously. Are you talking about contests for individual poems? Are you talking about like manuscript contests, for like chapbooks or full length books, because whether or not they're worth it will, possibly be an entirely different thing. It's just based on that. There's also, I think, a lot of people are a little bit worried about contests because there's a lot of them, and not all of them are necessarily on the up and up. Some of them they have very large entry fees and not really a lot to offer on the back end or anything to offer on the back end. Which basically it's like, is it really a contest or is it just a reading fee? A general rule of thumb should be, if there is an entry fee to enter a contest, there should be at least a prize at the end of it that's roughly 10 times what the entry fee was.
And now again, like anything, that's more of a suggestion than a rule. Like it's really up to you how much like the prize is that's worth it. But if you're paying an entry fee for no prize, or if you're paying an entry fee for a prize that's worth half of what your entry fee was costing you, that's probably not worth it. That's what I would call a ripoff.
Yeah.
So
It's also, again, like a question you're talking about, like an individual poem in a contest, and then what's going to happen with, like, the winners of the contest. Are they going to publish the winning poems in, maybe an anthology or a journal or something like that? Is it an online publication? Maybe they're going to like highlight the winning poems, somewhere on the website or the blog or whatever it is. Will there be a print equivalent? I know some groups that they every year they do a poetry contest and they have first place winners, but then they also, so they publish a publication, and the first place winners get, monetary prize, and they're put at the front of this this little anthology, and then in the back of the anthology they put a bunch of honorable mentions. So in that case it's like, would that be worth it because there's possible publication associated with it? And then, even if you don't win, you might be listed as an honorable mention. Sometimes that could be worth it because it's, a credential piece to, kind of put on your poetic resume. Maybe there's a chance at winning a cash prize in that regard too. So things like that could be worth it. Um,
yeah, I mean, I guess a prize doesn't always have to be monetary. It could be like you said, oh, you get published, or it. I mean, it could be a free case of beer. I don't know. I'm thinking. I know there was a book contest that was run by a local brewery down here, and I think that I know they had a cash in their prize, but I think part of the prize was actually also beer. I could be wrong on that. I need to look it up, so I'm not going to name any names.
what,
But
was that a poetry contest, or was
yes, it
that
was a poetry book contest.
from a brewery?
Yes,
Wow.
I have a friend of mine actually. He entered and did not win, but he got a very nice letter from them, saying that they encouraging him to continue writing and that they loved his poetry, but unfortunately it was really stiff competition that year and they couldn't choose everyone. But yes, it's a local brewery that does a poetry book contest. Poetry is coming back.
You see, everybody, you never know where it's gonna, where the demand for poetry is gonna come from. I did do a poetry reading at a brewery once during a beer tasting day. It was a good thing a poet went in front of me trying to read a profound poem that nobody paid attention to, so I need to do one about urinals. But uh, but yeah. So again, there's lots of contests out there, and sometimes libraries have contests or academic institutions have contests. Sometimes just poetry groups have contests, publishers have contests. Local gems, we have the NaPoWriMo contest every year for National Poetry Writing Month, which is the 30 poems in 30 days. And then, there is an entry fee, and then there's, cash prizes at the top. And we also offer publication for the top three winners. In the past, we used to offer publication of some honorable mentions as well, but then we became way too busy. And, so now it's just for the winners.
Yeah. So I guess the to come up with some guidelines of like how can you tell if a contest is worth it? Because that's maybe a more complete question or an easier one to answer. Um, Number one would be, is there an entry fee? And if yes, what is the prize? And this is just like any other type of contest, right? Like if the entry fee is not worth, I mean, if the prize is not worth the cost of admission, then the contest is probably not worth it. But from a perspective of besides the money, what would you get out of it? Um, you know, Again, it depends on the contest. If it's one that has some sort of twist or challenge to it that you think would be really cool or challenge you as a poet, and sure, maybe it's worth it to go for it. Like, the NaPoWriMo challenge, for example, that we run in April, where we challenge you to write 30 poems in 30 days. For some people, that's no problem. They do that every year. But for some people like me, that's really hard. So it might be a challenge that's worth exploring just to push yourself to get better. But if it's just $10 poetry contest, $5 cash prize to the winner, that's probably not worth it. So
Yeah, that would be a ripoff.
yeah, and also you want to look at like, all right, are these the winners or the honorable mentions or anyone going to have the chance to maybe get into a publication as a result of this, or have their poems read on the air somewhere? As I know some places will do that. They'll do a contest where the winners are invited to come read their poems on on a podcast or on a radio station, or sometimes even live at a poetry reading. And
Mhm.
some contests will have a big reading at the end where the feature reader is actually the winners and runners up of that contest.
Yeah. And then there's also, one thing we didn't even cover on was actually recitation contests or performance contests like that, because we've actually had recitation contests in the past, and we've had poetry slam contests and things like that. So that's a whole other angle to consider in terms of that. Like what's the audience size? How many people might be viewing a recording of it later on? Because like one of the benefits sometimes of entering a contest versus just a publication is, the the prestige really of if you win or you take a place or you're an honorable mention or a finalist or anything like that, that kind of ups your street cred to an extent, because it's like, well, you did this good in this contest. But it's also the prestige of if you're one of the winners. Usually, if the contest is doing it right, they kind of parade the winners around a little bit, announce them to whatever. Like we always announce the winners of our NaPoWriMo contest to our email list of like 25,000 people. So they at least, everybody gets a recognition of, oh, who actually won and all that, and then hopefully that helps sell books, after the fact. But and that's the thing with there's a lot of contests out there. It's like, if you won, what is the point? Like, are you going to get the
Right.
exposure? People going to see, the winning poem, the winning book, all of that. And, again, there's also the budget to consider too, because one of the problems with entering a lot of contests, if there is an entry fee, is it could add up to a lot of money if you're entering into a lot of them. And so then it's like you either need to win a certain number of them to kind of make up the costs, or you're kind of blowing through a budget. I mean, some people maybe have unlimited money; they don't care; they'll just pay to send it in anywhere. But I know most people are probably working on a budget, and so it's sort of like what ratio, if you have your poem pooled or sent out there, what percentage should you enter maybe into contest versus just regularly submit? Because another thing about the contests is sometimes publications, count things submitted to a contest. Sometimes they kind of count that as already submitted. And depending on the guidelines or whatever, sometimes contests want new poems that haven't been submitted elsewhere either. Sometimes they're okay with previously published material or something like that too. But it all depends. So you might end up in a situation where you've got like 5 poems you want to submit places, and maybe there's, like 6 contests you want to enter, but they all want, like the exclusive submission to that contest. They don't want like simultaneous submissions out there. So that's another thing to kind of consider in terms of, like what the pool is, what the availability is, which the contests are, all of that.
Yeah, that also goes for publishers too. So like if you're considering, if you want a publisher to consider you for publication, but you enter your poems into like 15 different contests, so like half of your book is tied up in contests, and that publisher considers that previously published or simultaneous submissions, they might not want to look at your book until those contests have been judged and that's over. Obviously that's an exaggeration. Nobody's going to be in 15 contests at once, are they? But like that's still something to consider. Also, you want to consider the prestige of the contest. Like
Yeah.
if you're in, you know, if your neighbor down the street who nobody's ever heard of decides to have a contest and you're one of three entrants, that's going to be a lot different than you entering and winning or even almost winning. I don't know, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but a big national contest that is including thousands of poets. So there thousands of poets, uh, but you want to make sure that, I mean, if a contest is prestigious enough and you have enough of a shot of doing well in it, then it's something. Sometimes in those cases, you don't even have to win to get something out of that contest. I mean, I guess there's always the experience, but I mean, think of singing competitions. How many of those people who don't win go on to have careers because they they got exposed and they were sort of shown to be good enough to be on that competition and to almost win. It's
Yeah,
sort of like that.
like Hell's Kitchen, that like statistically speaking, the runner-ups have actually done, over the long haul have done a lot better than the winners on
Yeah.
that show. So, but yeah, I mean, like, a couple examples of big, contests might be like, some of the Tupelo Presses contest, the chapbook contest, where they actually, like there's thousands of dollars in prizes there, or the Rattle chapbook contest that they started a few years ago, where it's not only a lot of money, but they give you like a couple thousand copies or something like that of the book or whatever. And that's the thing too, like again, with individual poems versus a book, because contest for a book, usually the prizes are a little bit more sweet, because it's like, I don't know too many contests for chapbooks that it doesn't end up with some kind of the book ending up in print. Even if they're not actually going to be the publisher of record, usually they'll get it printed for you. But most of the time, the winners of like a chapbook contest get published, and usually a certain amount of free copies associated with that. Sometimes a cash prize, things like that. So, it might be a much more a bigger deal to assemble a book to send in, but usually the prizes kind of show that on the other end. And yeah, to your point
Yeah.
about the prestige of the contest, like I remember a bunch of years ago, this probably had to be back in like 2011, 2012, but there was somebody who started a local just poetry open mic night at this place. It was in the banquet room of a restaurant, and decided to have a poetry contest. Which, first of all, was it a contest of reading your poetry at the thing or sending in? Turned out it was sending in, which I didn't find out until later. But they just set up an email address, and the contest was only open to people who lived in that specific town. And
Mm.
they thought that, oh, this contest was meant to, just bring out the poets from that town. It's like, okay, well, what do they get if they win? Oh, they just get to say they won the contest. It's like, okay, so I mean, there was no entry fee, but it's like, okay, so no prize, no publication. You're not going to like feature them at the reading, anything. There was like nothing
Bragging
associated.
rights.
Yeah, so it's like, what the heck was
Yeah.
the point?
Yeah, I would avoid that. At least they didn't charge money. They didn't charge an entry fee, as everybody wants to pay for bragging rights.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're the best in the town. It's well, it's to the point about the prestige of the contest too. It's sort of like how you have awards, and everybody wants to say that they're a pushcart nominee. Pushcart's a
mm-hmm.
good example because like even if you haven't heard of the pushcart, like even people don't know what it is, have seen it in somebody's bio somewhere that they're a pushcart nominee. Because
Yeah,
the minute you get nominated for that, because it's such a big sort of national and considered to be a prestigious award, that's immediately something you can put on your resume. Even if you were the last choice for the award that year, if you were nominated, people you can put that in your bio.
yeah.
Um,
Well, it's
it
kind of like
yeah.
Pulitzer Prize nominee. I mean, Pulitzer Prize winner, really big deal. But knowing the end from the publisher, it's like all it takes to nominate a book for the Pulitzer is sending in 5 copies and $50. So it's like, somebody could do that for themselves. Like if they started a small press just to self-publish their own stuff, they could literally just send it in on behalf of the press and be like, oh, I'm a Pulitzer Prize nominated poet. So it's like. And I've known
Yeah,
some people who've done that actually,
it's
but
not the
it's
same as being nominated for the Nobel Prize.
no.
But that being said, though, I think some contests are kind of like that, right? If you don't win, but you were a finalist in Rattle's contest, like Rattle is one of those publishers that is notorious for being difficult to get into
Yeah.
and for being very picky. So if you were published in Rattle, or if you were, a finalist of their contest or something like that, that actually says a lot.
Hmm.
So sometimes the contest doesn't even have to be one that you have a shot of winning, or that you can win if you do well in it.
Yeah. And then there's also the other case of like, there's people out there who maybe they don't have the funds to, print a book themselves or whatever like that. And maybe a contest is offering them, publication X number of copies. And maybe for them, like financially, that would be the best way to, go about it, is pay like a small entry fee to have a chance of getting it that way. So I mean, there's contests specifically designed for those reasons, where it's like they kind of want to discover like, an underprivileged poet, and kind of bring them to the light, so to speak. So they're, they come in all shapes and sizes. Like we say, they're not all created equally. So, sadly, yet again, we're coming back to the answer of, is a contest worth it? It depends. Like there are plenty of contests that are completely and utterly worth it and definitely worthy of the time and effort spent into it. And then there are plenty out there that it's kind of like, probably not worth it. And so, if you have enough poetry and enough time and enough funds to send into them, whatever. And again, your situation is going to be completely different from the next person's. It's like maybe, you could throw together like $1,000 budget to just send to poetry contests every single month. Maybe it's like you only, you're looking to find $17 to buy some tacos, so it's like maybe entering it is not the best use of your time and resources. And, maybe you have a really big pool of poetry to send a lot of different places, in which case it couldn't hurt. Maybe you've only got a few, in which case you might want to be more selective about where you send them. So,
Yeah.
again, all this is going to depend.
And I think one last thing that I want to sort of touch on with contests is we talked about how to identify a ripoff, which
Mm-hmm.
I think I would hope most people have some of the experience to be able to identify them on their own. But identifying contest scams, which is different from a ripoff,
Mm-hmm.
and that part of that comes down to doing your research, Googling and seeing do they have previous winners? Do the previous winners have things to say about the contest and how challenging it was for them to get their prize? One notorious one that sort of skirts the line of scams that James and I both have really good experience with is they're not the scam is not around anymore. They sold off their URL, so poetry.com is no longer a scam site. It is now owned by Lulu, but for a while we were in high school, it was. And the way it worked is people would post their poems online, and they would immediately get a letter from the website saying, congratulations, your poem has been chosen, as part of our publication. Now this isn't strictly a contest, but they would say, all you have to do is send us $50 and you'll be in the book, and
Mm-hmm.
you'll get a copy of the book. And then if you bought the book, then you would get an invitation to their poetry festival that I don't remember how much it was. It was like $5,000, I think.
Yeah, and yet if you called the hotel, they never had any record of there being an event there. So
yeah. So
yeah.
doing a little research into what the prize that they're offering. If you've never heard of the person, I mean, obviously if it's someone you've heard of, if it's Rattle's contest, you can be pretty sure they're not a scam.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, just to get to your point though about the difference between a ripoff and a scam, like for example, here's a water bottle. If I were to charge you $50 for this, that would be a ripoff, but not a scam. If I sold this to you and told you that this was rocket engine fuel, that would be a scam. So just the kind of difference there. Sometimes there's things out there that maybe it's like not worth it, but it's still genuine. And then there's, things that are just complete and utter lies, and the thing is there's so many of all different types of this in this day and age, it's kind of hard to identify the difference. I mean, like some people, the difference just between vanity press, small press, self-publishing, hybrid publishing, there's a lot of different things there, but that could be an entirely other video to get into. But yeah, so contests basically could be worth it.
yeah.
Yeah, that's about what I would say, is they could be worth it, just depends on the contest. So yeah, hopefully we answered this in a lot of circular ways, and hopefully you're the wiser for it. If you're looking for 90 free poetry prompts, just look in the link in the description of this video. And if you're interested in publishing coaching, look at that as well. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time at the Publisher Speakeasy.
Hey, everybody.